Hello, welcome to this carrier update brought to you by Powerfleet. I'm here with Tony Mulvey. Tony, good morning and welcome back.
Good morning. How are you, Anthony?
I'm doing well. What are we getting into here?
So we've got our outbound tender volume index, so our kind of look at those requests for capacity, right? And we've kind of been in this free fall, say, since the beginning of March, right? And I think John Kingston made a really good point yesterday in an interview I saw on LinkedIn. He talked about how, hey, this is maybe a slowdown in freight demand for fuel prices, right? If you look at our diesel truck stop actual rate, when they spiked, that's when volumes fell off a cliff. So wondering if there's some correlation there. Probably a little early to tell, but it is definitely something to pay attention to. But I mean, look where we're at. We're well below where we were a year ago. We're approaching those 2020 levels, right? Obviously 2020, this was about the time we saw that surge in freight demand. So that one's a little more of an interesting comp, but really, I mean, the big ones here is we've seen these levels go from 15,000 to upper 13,000. So, I mean, still elevated from where they were pre-pandemic, but where they've been in the past, say, 18 months, we're well off those highs.
Yeah, I think that's a great point there. And John Kingston's always full of like some really cool insights. And I think that's an excellent point that he brought up there, because when we're looking at volumes and seeing where they are compared to a year ago, it's almost making me think that maybe we can glean some insights from some year-over-year comps coming up soon. Not yet, but it's almost making me think that we're almost to that point.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, there's always those year-over-year comps that are kind of telling. I mean, we did see kind of a decline in April last year, right? So where we head with volume levels. But I mean, one thing to think about, and we're getting earnings coming up, right? And when you think about earnings releases, carriers will report good things, right? When rising fuel costs means higher fuel surcharges, higher revenue with those fuel surcharges. Shippers, on the other hand, they're going to talk about those rising fuel surcharges and rising fuel prices. I'm wondering if some of this decline in volume is shippers just saying, hey, we don't want to ship as much with these rising fuel prices. So definitely something to pay attention to. We'll move here onto our next chart, our outbound tender reject index. We see that it's actually dipped below 2020 levels, right? So down in that 15% range, just under 16% range, so 15.93%. First time we've been sub 16 since July of 2020. I mean, it seems so long ago, and we've been at such high levels. But really, that decline's probably not as sharp as what we've seen on the volume side. But, I mean, ultimately, when you kind of look at everything all together, accepted volume levels are pretty close to flat year over year. I mean, I think yesterday, I know I looked, they were up about 1.5%. We did see a decline in volume levels and rejections today. So obviously that number's going to narrow probably a little bit, but it still tells you that there is more freight overall, but it's that gap's a lot narrower than it was, say, a month ago when we were talking accepted volumes being up about 10%.
So when we're looking at volume, still a lot going through, just coming down. So it's almost like that really taking on that slower growth mindset when we're looking at accepted volumes, at least.
Yeah, and when you think about it, you factor in the inflation rates and things like that. I mean, slower growth seems like that should be the case, right? Yeah. Almost 8% inflation. I know consumer sentiment index was like the lowest level it's been in I don't even know how long.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's some signs there that it's like, okay, maybe the consumer's starting to take a breather, which obviously for freight demand and rates and all that, maybe it's time to hit the brakes. But I'll talk about it in another carrier update. Contract rates haven't gone anywhere. I mean, they're still up at all-time highs. Spot rates have declined, which, I mean, obviously doesn't seem like a surprise when you look at volumes and rejections falling off. So definitely some correlations there to definitely note. So, I mean, it is an interesting time in the freight market. Are we starting to see the signs of softening? Yes. How far do we go? I don't really know. Because, I mean, you look at on the ocean side, the import levels there are still up. Like, I think I looked the other day, they were up 10 to 12% year over year. I mean, so there's still freight coming into the country. It's just, is it getting moved via truck? And if it is, it's probably going under contract rates at this point. I mean, obviously seeing that more limited spot market activity.
I think that's a great point when we think about what's coming into the country, because you can always go like a level further as to, okay, this is what's domestic, what's coming into the country, and as you mentioned, there's still a lot coming in. So Tony, thank you so much for this update. Looking forward to that next one and those contract rates. Right now, we're going to toss it back over to Kaylee Nix.